What does that say?
They are languages as others, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're other than they all. There are canyons, they are yawning in the night. They are rank and bitter anger, they are all devoid of light. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul-foreboding, and they're also very wise. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul-foreboding, and they're also very wise. Let us build a bridge of music, let us cross this little song. Let us span another canyon, let us write another line. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're up and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and we off and on our way. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're up and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and we off and on our way. We will tell them building bridges.
Be off and on our way. This is Bridges Programming. Thank you, Bill Stain, for letting us use the Bridges song on Bridges Programming. And in the beginning of the song, he states very simply that we're filled with blind suspicion and apathy, and we have to overcome those things. And we're going to try to help do that with some, wouldn't call it enlightenment, but education. And this is brought to you by the Human Renewable Energy Measure, which sort of helps us put in perspective what's going on around the world nowadays. And this is Bridges Programming. This is called Sunday on the Front Stoop, the longest stoop in the world, brought to you, as I said, by the Human Renewable Energy Measure, the hrem.org. You don't have to buy anything, you don't have to sign up, don't anything, just understand what the renewable energy, the Human Renewable Energy Measure is. And it's about that all humanity has to have their basic needs met for about an hour a day, no matter where they are in the world, of their labor and time and work.
And those needs can be represented by energy units.
And those needs must be
in the economic
system by energy units and not money. And then you can convert that to money, but that's what the HRM
It'll
means.
keep it honest. It'll keep it more honest. It won't keep it perfectly honest, but it at least easier to track than what we've got now with fiat currency and subjective currency.
You get rid of your dysfunctional economic system, which gets rid of your dysfunctional governments, which represents humanity and the planet around us. With us, who's talking next to me is Susan Comot, and on the other end of the line, about 2,000 miles away, is Dennis Carius. Hello, Dennis.
Oh, hi, Jeff.
And I'm Jeff.
Hi, Dennis.
I'm Jeff Beller.
Are you still Jeff Beller?
I'm still Jeff Beller. Sometimes they call me different names, and they all end with an M for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway,
what do you mean?
Well, I'm not going to go into detail. But they call me a lot of nasty names.
No, they don't. Nobody calls me
Well,
bad
it depends
names.
upon who I talk to, actually. But anyway,
most people like you very, very much.
But anyway, we are here with you today, and we really want to make sure that you guys try to help yourselves and the people around you with this idea of the Human Renewable Energy
The more we
Measure.
think about it and flesh it out in our minds, and then talk about it with our friends and people that we meet, this can become something just as effective as other measurements that we use all the time, like time. I just mentioned time.
Time.
Yeah.
How about how
distance?
We can
gravity.
We can talk about how. Let's see how do we? Let me ask you a question. Theoretically, how do we vote people in? Don't we use numbers for that?
That's right. Are we using a lot of numbers? We need certain. The candidates will, once they reach that lucky number of whatever of electoral or delegate
Electoral
votes.
no matter what the population.
It doesn't matter what the population wants. That number tells you that that's going to be the candidate.
Right?
Well, that's a very interesting question. We could do a whole show just on that one topic because
Let's talk about it now.
What's that?
Let's talk about it now.
Good, because I think it's a very important topic. That's why I love doing this show.
You go ahead and say what you think about that.
Yes, years ago in this country, we used to vote the same way we do now when we go in with a paper ballot and we mark who we want to vote for, and then we go back out and hand out the paper ballot. But now, what we do now is we push those paper ballots through a scanner, and if the polls close at 9 p.m., 10 minutes later, at 9:10, everybody can go home. They don't have to count any ballots because the scanner counts these ballots. That sounds good, but the problem is we trust, and then we trust whoever programs that scanner instead of trust and then verify.
But that's a layer on top of a layer.
But Dennis, let me ask you a question.
There's something that comes before that, which is the measurement, the numbers that dictate who the candidate's going to be, which we have no control over at all. They don't even reflect proportionally the popular votes in most of the states. Like Florida is a winner-take-all state. You know, it doesn't matter what the rest of the population.
They're not proportional government. However, and then you have the
it's almost like
then you have the electoral college, which again, even if the popular vote is different, then they still can vote in someone who the popular vote doesn't want.
And if that doesn't work, they go to the Supreme Court and they just say this is who the president's going to be.
So this is and the other thing is, as far as verify and count,
there are many layers of what separate popular vote or individual desires of people from the election of their president.
There's even more
country.
To that. You could verify because they don't destroy the papers that came in. Those are stacked and they can be verified. Now the next problem is the only people you're voting for are the people that the mainstream media is pumping, which is controlled by the money.
Right.
So no matter how you slice it, Dennis,
there just is very little wiggle room for the individual or what would be considered democratic.
You're not getting any democratic or free elections. It's just psychological.
And what you're describing is another layer that's separating us from the possibility of actually deciding who's going to govern this country.
But you do have a way of verifying the paper votes, but that's not the problem. The problem is even if the popular vote decides to go for a candidate,
it's not going to matter.
It's not going to matter because the electoral college, you can change that. And then if that's divided, they go to the Supreme Court. And then the problem then remains is who is getting the information that the candidates are giving, because only people with big money.
You know, an interesting thing about the Supreme Court right now, they leave it like it is. It's kind of in balance. So it would be a little interesting if we have the same situation that we had with Bush. It would be much harder for there to be a consensus in the Supreme Court as it sits right now. It may be actually a fail-safe for popular vote in a way if they don't put another Supreme Court justice on there who can break the tie.
And the other thing,
I just was thinking about that.
The other thing I was thinking about today was that it's because of winner-take-all states, you have a division in the United States, very strong division between the two major parties, the Democrat and Republican parties. But if you had a proportional government where you had, let's say, supposing the Republicans got, let's say, 45% of the vote, and the Democrats got 55% of the vote.
There are lots of governments that do that.
Right. Then you have proportional government.
Canada does.
So they represent all the people, and that makes a little better sense. But this winner take all nonsense is like going
Well,
to war
it's-
and beating people up and then putting a dictatorship in.
It's very, very easy to control a situation like we have in this country.
Right.
The governmental, what is it, mechanism is very easy to control. It's getting more and more simplistic. They divide the states into districts that are, predominantly conservative or predominantly liberal. And of course, the candidates know exactly what is represented in most areas of the country, and that's what they play to, and that's what they divide them deliberately so that the delegates are loaded, in favor of this or that party, and they pretty much, there are a few times like when Bernie Sanders pulled out a win in. Where was it? They were expecting Hillary to.
No, I forget. It doesn't matter.
One of the states
The other
that they
thing
did a primary in, and they were completely wrong, and that can happen. There can be flukes, just like there was a fluke when Gore and Bush pretty much, tied for the presidency back when. It can happen, but it's sad that in order to point out how loaded our system is in terms of predictability and manipulation, the only time you can really see it is when, just for an instant, there's a glimmer of hope, and you say, well, wait a minute, the popular vote, the popular vote is, we want this person, and then all of a sudden, oh no, that's taken away. Now that tells you this is not a democracy, right. And we know it isn't. It's a republic, but it's becoming more and more controllable, manipulatable by money and power. And this is so obvious. It's
a dictatorship.
This cycle that we are actually at the verge of hiring a dictator.
We are hiring a dictator. It's a very, very insidious,
and
subtle,
we are not in control
subtle
of it.
Dictatorship, because we have no control over the elections. Number one, the elections, even if you did have control over the actual elections, as you're suggesting, with a paper ballot, is that the people who are running are controlled by the big business anyway. So
deals are being made, and promises are being
but the
made.
Problem is, and we blame other countries for our problems here. But it's all about the economy. The economy controls the economics. The economy controls who's making money and surviving and dying. That's what's happening in Syria and Rwanda. It's happening all over the world because the economy controls it, and they control who's in office, whether it's in the United States, and we divide the countries up so we can control the countries easier. So we have 50 countries, or 200 countries rather, in 50 states. Now you're dividing all this crap up so you can control it. And that's how you neaten up your home too, by the way. You divide
control your environment.
To control your environment.
Mm-hmm.
You divide the house up into different rooms. This room we're going to have our kitchen utensils in.
Mm-hmm.
This room is the bathroom utensils. Mm-hmm. This room is the living room where we're going to have our entertainment utensils. Mm-hmm. When you mix them all together, you can't control your environment. So that's how you control your environment.
You separate it
into different rooms. Right. And then the rooms have different spots. You put certain things in, and that's how you can control your environment. And that's what they're doing throughout the world. They divided it up into different countries, then they divide the countries up into states, and they control it
and then
very
the people up into interest groups or whatever you want to call it, and religious groups.
And they divide religion into this thing, and it's just unbelievable how the economic system is controlling our lives, and we don't even see it, and we have even a tough time even wrapping our minds around it. That's where
Well,
the H
because
trend
it's
comes
been
in.
going on for, since actually Roman times.
Going
essentially.
5,000 years since the time humanity got.
Well, agriculture was
Yeah,
probably the
abundant.
beginning of our more sedentary and by being stationary and developing our agriculture, people started developing what you described, ownership of areas, control of areas, first for, the most fertile and productive for agriculture or animal husbandry and that kind of stuff, and on from there.
Yeah, we're gonna go to what Susan set up a concept for the show, because she listened to some programming the other day, and she thought.
Well, it got me thinking, and I expanded from that point, because I don't like to make superstars out of individuals, which is what we have a tendency to do. Just like right now, they're trying to tell us that there are certain people who are running for office that are more worthy than anyone else, and all this kind of stuff, and they can lead us into a future of great prosperity and wonderfulness, and this is called generating hope, and all of us are capable of jumping on that train, because hope is something that
it's a belief
that
system.
humans
It's a belief system.
that humans have the capacity for.
Well,
And when things are really down, if somebody says, hey, look, if you blah 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 me, and I will blah blah blah, and you will have a better future.
but
This is not a good road to go down or a train to jump on, because it's not based on anything. You have to make your own thought processes and not give them over to someone who is promising you something. One thing that you always have that isn't being taken from you, even though the systems are trying to regulate and try to control states and individuals within the states with all these different mechanisms that we're very aware of. One thing they cannot take is your ability to think, and that is what we're trying to present with these programs. Some other avenues that your mind can go down and consider. And in this program, I was thinking that we might want to consider some very, very large systems that we are all living within, that are larger than our governments, that are larger than our religion, larger than, of course, our family and our neighborhood. These systems are planetary. They've been around and developed over millions and millions of years on this planet, and have developed to the point where we are now. Geologists describe the period that we've been living in, the Holocene, as an incredibly stable time on this planet, and that's why we've thriven, or we are thriving as a species, as a human species, and we're not being traumatized by earth upheavals or system upheavals on this planet, systems like the climate, systems like the ocean systems, the land, the geology of our planet, which is a much slower glacial type of system. But right now, we're being asked to be aware of climate change, and we're being told by our best scientists that humans are profoundly affecting the climate. Now, this is an important thing to think about, and to it doesn't cost you anything. Your mind can work over this idea, here and there. During your day, though, you have other pressing things that economics forces upon all of us, so that we can just make a living, but still we can think, and it won't, as I say, cost you anything. to think, and to think maybe today, or when you listen to part of this program or all of this program, about some larger systems that we're all affected by. Not only do we want you to consider the human renewable energy measure, which is what we all have in common as a species. We need our food, shelter, and education, but we need to also sometimes, and now probably more frequently, consider the larger systems that we're impacting as a species. And in fact, they're actually, as I mentioned on another program, considering naming the era that humans have been affecting over the past 10,000 or more years as the Anthropocene era, meaning the era of humans, the not ERROR, hopefully, but ERA of humans. We want not to be remembered by the rest of the life forms on this planet as a destructive presence. Hopefully, of course, whatever survives. If we don't, probably won't care. But just a thought. But anyways, there's a planetary way of thinking about our presence on Earth. And I was listening to a program that interviewed a very interesting natural resource teacher in Sweden. And I'll mention his name at the end of the program. He has, oh, well, I can mention it now. Johan, Rockström, and he has a YouTube video where he talks about his book and about his theories about boundaries on this planet, called Big World, Small Planet. You can read that. And it was an NPR interview. But it got me thinking, and he names about 9 different what he feels are the most important systems on Earth. But then he kind of narrowed it down to what I can sort of agree with. Number 1 being the biodiversity on this planet. And yes, we need all the biodiversity, and we are profoundly affecting it. There are some research that has indicated that our presence has caused the ecosystem and the biodiversity to decline by 60% of its biodiversity during our mere 10,000 years of impact. And most of that impact has been since Roman times, and then even more profoundly since the end of World War II and the Industrial Revolution really took off. So, it doesn't take long. It indicates just how incredibly fragile the balance of the systems on this planet are. And they are constantly morphing and adjusting toward around what is occurring. And we're the prime movers right now that are occurring on the planet. So there's biodiversity. We need all our plants and animals. We need them. And we can go more deeply into that. Why? Just to quickly state that, just a simple mechanism that we all depend on is pollination of the plants. Of course, the bees are essential. They are threatened now with a lot of stress from environmental changes that have been brought upon them because of our agricultural processes, our desire to turn every square inch of possible arable land, fertile land, into agricultural commercial enterprise. And this balance is not, there's no balance there. It's not a balanced process. We're destroying habitat, that essential diversity of the ecosystem inhabits, and we're destroying it with our agricultural practices. Another profound system is, of course, the climate, and it needs to be what we have and what we've had over the Holocene period. This is when we evolved, and if we don't have it, we will be different. We will mutate into something else, or not survive, because this is the conditions under which, these are the climate conditions under which we have thrived. It's changing. We're changing it chemically through our man-made compounds and chemicals that we allow to escape into the atmosphere. And of course, that changes climate, profoundly changes melting of ice, and where it's been held, where great quantities of water have been held for millions and millions and gazillions of years. This changes the ocean currents, the amount of tidal rise there will be, coastal areas all around the world. But this is, I'm not bringing this up to depress everybody. I'm bringing this up because this is where real hope is. Real hope is where we can think about these larger things, and then this influences the way that we behave toward each other and toward other life forms that are all around us. It's very, very important to consider the fragility of what we're living through right now. And by considering it, desire to protect it, understand it, and through understanding, understand how to protect it. It's an essential mental practice that our times call for. And by opening your mind to these kind of things, you're also opening your mind to the idea that we're living now within an economic system which is destroying these essential systems. We need to make an essential and profound change in the way we practice economics.
The Pope came up with this as well. It was interesting. Our belief systems are very, very strong. And I just heard a program this morning where they were saying, well, they're getting rid of the belief in magic and they now believe in Christianity. Well, they're both belief systems.
They're both magic.
They're both magical. There's nothing based on science. And we as a species are pretty damn stupid because we keep on killing one another.
Well, I don't think we're stupid.
Well,
we're able
to produce TV programs. We're able to, we produce
still
a college,
evolving.
which we give somebody a piece of paper, say, you're very smart because you were able to start that. So
Well,
we're going
that's
to make
another belief system.
That's another belief system. But the reality, and then I have a friend of mine who works with me. I pay him, so I guess I'm his boss. But the reality is, he's a good human being, and I like him. I have to compensate, so I use money to compensate with him. But the reality is, he can't read, but he's a great worker, and he's more valuable to me than my doctor is, because if he couldn't do what I can't do, I would wind up in the hospital. Here's a guy who's very valuable, a great hard worker. He's like a phenomenal human being, and he's very, very valuable. And most people think that because you have a PhD in your name, you're more valuable than the person who's digging a ditch. That's not true.
Well, a lot of people who do go, and make that the goal of their education, to get as many degrees as they possibly can so that they can then impress people with this, they are, unfortunately, being used, also by the economic system.
But the point I'm trying to bring out is that we have to be able to open up our minds enough to think, and that's what Susan's trying to bring out, that we need to look at something that's much, much bigger than our local surroundings, like the dog barking next door or your family and the problems we all face. People have cancer, people have diseases, people are dying around us, people are being born around us. These are all things that are happening right in front of our face. We can see that. They're physical. But we also have to realize that our economic system is not taking that into account, other than how they can exploit us for the people who are being born and the people who are dying.
We have to think about it and take it into account. What are the planetary boundaries that we can safely operate within? And really, there's no way, even scientifically right now, that we can determine exactly, but as it's pretty logical that if we've evolved during the Holocene, and these are the conditions that we know were present during that time.
Physical needs.
Those are the conditions that need to persist in order for us to thrive into the future. And right now we are changing them, and we are destroying them. As I said, there's even a name for the biodiversity loss at this point. It's called the Sixth Extinction by many scientists, because of 60% of the ecosystem is affected. We're losing species daily because of our practices, and most of the practices that are affecting this loss of biodiversity are agricultural practices.
Our economic system is controlling ag, controlling politics, controlling the wars, controlling the way we put people in prison. Economics does all of this. And we need to say, okay, what's wrong with the economic system? And what's basically wrong with the economic system, it doesn't take into account human physics needs, our intake
and
for
by
food,
extension, life needs.
Life needs.
In general.
We need a certain amount of energy units to stay alive, a certain amount of energy units for water, a certain amount of energy units for food and shelter, and water. Those energy units can be measured in physics, in physical things. You need to have X amount of glasses of water a day, depending upon the size of the glass. We know how big a glass is. We measured it. It's 8 ounces or 10 ounces or 16 ounces. When you go into a store, they say all one size for the same price, 50 cents or $1, whatever they charge. Because that's irrelevant. What they cost is irrelevant, but the amount of liquid in the cup is not irrelevant. Because if I only gave you 1 ounce of drink a day and you only had 3 cups of water, you would die from dehydration. You need more than 3 ounces a day of water. We require that. It's part of physics. That's what physics is. It's nothing imaginary, or you got to be a PhD to understand it. It's physical things. That's simple. You are a smart guy. You're a smart woman. You're a smart person. You are smart because you know you need to have water and food. It's that simple. That's all you need.
That's what's motivating everyone to go to work.
Right. And you know you need to get a job because you know you need to get the water and food and shelter. And you know you have to learn something to know what job to have, because if you can't read, sometimes you have to do physical labor, and that's harder to do, but it's very valuable. It's very, very valuable. Try to figure it this way. I bet you most people who listen to this program have garbage collection, or at least they have a dump. If you didn't have someone to run the dump or pick up your garbage, what would you look like? How much can you keep in your home and fill up with the trash and the garbage that should be thrown out? you normally would suffocate yourself, or you'd be covered with vermin or insects, because you got to clean up. Human beings require other human beings to help do this. Digging a trench, how many times do you see beautiful roads? But who built the beautiful roads? Oh, money built them, of course, but money didn't really physically build them. The physics of the roads are what people build them. Someone driving a dozer, somebody with a shovel to neaten up the pile the dozer couldn't neaten up.
Recently,
Right.
how the road was prepared.
But it's people. After you get all said and done, there's a guy with a broom sweeps off the excess sand that was dropped by mistake. There's a guy with a whole bunch of guys with forklifts with sod that delivers the sod to the people who throw the sod on the side of the road. Another guy comes with a truck, physically puts water in the truck and waters the sod. Human beings do the work. Human beings are physical things, and those human beings will die without food and shelter. They will die. We will die. So it's measurable things.
You can actually think of the human species as a kind of biodiversity in itself, because we're all individuals. We all have various abilities that are different in subtle ways. So we're diverse, and our diversity as humans is essential for our survival also.
Not only are we diverse, we're also genetically modified. Nature genetically modifies us. GMOs are what we and species are. Nature does GMOs regularly on a slower pace. So if you took the profit out of if you take the profit out of the market for GMOs, we can have really good GMOs. We can have GMOs that benefit humanity.
Well, there are a lot of mutations that nature does that do not survive, and it's always changing, but it's a slower process than what we do in a lab, where you can intensely bombard one certain kind of plant seed with various mutations until you get the one that you think is the best. And but the best in terms of the economics of the day, which is resistant to this and that insect or drought resistant or whatever, and then planting that over thousands and thousands of acres, and we see this
machine
all over the world.
And then we develop a machine. Like, we're real smart when it comes to our technology, because the economic system forces that on us. However, if you change the economic system, we may be able to develop our smarts to help all humanity, as Clinton once said, to float all boats, and not to give Clinton all the glory, and what Reagan said, everything trickles down. But what he didn't say, it only trickled down the economic system because the tax structure was set up differently. But then once you took that away, it doesn't trickle down anymore. So you're screwing all over humanity. And then you look at what Nixon said, another Republican said, that we can't have a minimum wage in this country. What we need here is a living wage, and that was profound. That's just before they tried to impeach him. But this is the kind of a thing we're running into in this society, because economic systems control everything, and we need to get a way of measuring the economic system in physics, looking at something larger than we are. We have to be able to,
and then drawing it down to how we're going to communicate with other people around us, what we understand, what the best science is of our time. You need to really give some credit to people who have tried to explore pure science for generations. Some things have come forward as being usable and true enough, good enough, as a friend of ours likes to say.
Good enough for science.
So, and when you were talking about trickle down with Reagan, of course, that doesn't work. And another example, a physical example of that is we're living in a part of the Florida Peninsula where they have intensely done sugarcane agriculture here And I'm not gonna, I don't know, it could be close to 100 years, but I don't hold me to that because I hate to say
Doesn't matter.
numbers. But it's been going on for very long time, and it's displaced most of the natural trickle down system of the Everglades, which was for millions of years, the Okeechobee Lake, which is a freshwater lake, would slowly seep its water that came from the highlands of Florida. Yes, there are some highlands here, and the rainwater would slowly go down to the Keys and into Florida Bay, and that whole area from Okeechobee down was all Everglades, which is a unique biome in the world. Nowhere else in the world was or is there a biome like the Everglades. So in that we have now a huge essentially blockade of thousands and thousands of acres that stretches almost across the whole peninsula below the Lake Okeechobee, and water has been directed and canalized into these thousands of acres to grow sugarcane for, as I said, 60 to 100 years, and expanding over those years to more and more thousands of acres. And so now when it rains torrentially here, as it did this winter, in a very unusual winter it was, because the winter is usually the dry season. So this is something that we can perceive as an individual, saying, wow, that was different. Why is that happening? Okay, so you take a note of that in the back of your mind. But you get these torrential rains, and because the Okeechobee has been trapped as a pooling of fresh water by berms all around it, especially on the southern end of it, because it tilts toward the Keys, because it wants to let its water trickle down. But now it can't unless man lets it out with locks and down the canals and down the Caloosahatchee River to Fort Myers or wherever. So we got all this rain. It has to come out, because you can't have the height of the water, the depth of the water in the Lake Okeechobee be more than, say, 15 feet, they've determined, or else it breaches and starts to destroy the berms.
Can kill the people around them.
And it can flood the towns all around the southern end of
So now the
Okeechobee. And so, okay, here we go. They let the water out in, the dams are open, the water goes down into the river, and behold, there's all kinds of complaining downriver. Oh my gosh, what's all this water? It looks a different color.
Water.
Oh my gosh.
It's not dirty water.
It's all the runoff from our agriculture. And of course, there's orange groves in the highlands of Florida and all the way down. And there's sugar cane. And there's ranching with all the runoff from the cattle ranching fields. And where does it go? It ends up in the Okeechobee Lake. And then you get the rain, and you got to let it.
And then the people south of here,
they destroy the natural trickle-down system. And then they say, and they try to blame it on the Okeechobee Lake. They say, oh, that horrible Okeechobee Lake. And so, what they're not understanding is the whole process of how this agriculture has destroyed the natural system and made
for
it,
money.
Yes, for the economic system. It's destroyed the natural system for the benefit of the economic system. And the amount of sugar, or the amount of oranges, or the amount of beef that's produced in Florida, this is not, we've got a diabetes epidemic. We've got, they say too much
cholesterol.
consumption of beef.
It's cholesterol problems.
The oranges, I don't know. I think they were brought here by the Spaniards.
But
They've got
that's,
an incredible blight
But you
on them now
but you
because
don't
there's a
drink the
monochrome.
orange juice you get is over a year old.
Some of it has been stored in
Most of it.
tanks.
Right, and they
stainless
sweeten it
steel
up
tanks.
and they add crap to it.
And
So
what
it's
we've
not the
noticed
pure oranges.
here is that the trucks that are full of already picked oranges, most of them are green.
And they're-
So
they're
how are
bitter.
you getting a
Sweet.
sweet orange from a green orange? Only by adding massive
Now,
amounts
I want to
of
get back to this
sweetener.
trickle down theory too.
But
If you
here's
mind.
this is a physical example of trickling down just doesn't work if you're putting real physical barriers to and the physical barriers to the economic trickle down were I mean that was just tongue in cheek. They knew that nothing was going to trickle down.
Whoa! I want to tell you. I want you to
In
picture.
my
I
opinion.
want you to picture a trickle down theory. Okay, you got all this stuff on top. Great water, delicious, and you drink it because you're the wealthy guy. You got all this water, all this wealth of water, and it trickles down to the next town. And then you got water, and then it trickles down to the next town, a little less. By the time it gets down to the bottom of the lake,
There's no
there ain't
water.
hardly any water left. You're dying to have some water. So this trickle down theory is a lot of crapola. You got to have the basic needs met, even on the bottom end of the trickle down. So this trickle down theory, if you think about it, was really a lot of crap
It has
to
to
begin
be a
with.
fair
And once you
distribution.
change the economics of that trickle down, where you change how much trickle you got to have down, that totally disappears.
The only way this is going to change is if most of us think about it and want it to change.
And we do. Most people do not want to kill other people. That is in fact a human function. We know better. Part of growing up,
You can't-
knowing you don't
This was
kill
one of
people.
the things that bothered me about what I heard on the radio yesterday, and the individual from Sweden who was, he made a lot of sense with the boundaries, the systems that he was designating as essential. Pretty logical. He gets it. He makes it a little too detailed, I think, because a lot of what he puts in the 9 systems is mostly man-made chemical loading of our planet. And one of those things, one of the chemical loading, just as an aside, is phosphorus and nitrogen. And these are the things that are used as fertilizers in all of this massive agriculture that we are doing, and that they are now being released in such quantities that they are destroying natural water systems. And that's what people are complaining about. But what's happening here? We've got an algae bloom. We've got a fish kill. We've got massive amounts of dead zones on the edges of almost all of Florida Bay has been destroyed by the runoff from phosphorus and nitrogen fertilizers that are used in the sugar industry, in the other agriculture, vegetable industries in South Florida. It has evolved. The agriculture in this state has evolved to destroy the water systems and the natural, first the natural flow of the fresh water to the end of the peninsula, and now systematically destroying the rivers and the aquifers under the limestone shelf that the whole peninsula rests on, is made out of. And meanwhile, people are not looking at the larger picture, that it is the way that the agriculture is practiced that has to change. And before that will change, the economic imperative of our time has to change. The imperative at this time is profit, not fair distribution of food and providing for everyone and preserving life on this planet. That is not the imperative of our economic system at this time, but that needs to become the imperative, and it needs to be tracked. It needs to be there needs to be a way to track the provision of food, shelter, and education for everyone within the economic system, to track it so that it is not hijacked to profit mongers and people who just not on board with the concept of preserving life and our species into the future, so that we are meant to thrive together. We don't need to dominate and destroy the earth to survive.
People around us.
And people around us. That is not how we survive into the future. We are meant to integrate our species with other species, and we have the intellect to.
We could have the intellect.
We do have the capacity to understand, even if at first it's just an intuition, and I won't say, I think that often our intuitions are very profound, but even if at the very beginning it's not something that can be expressed in sentences, in languages, we have a feel for when we're going in the wrong direction. And this is what we need. We need to consider the biodiversity on this planet. We need to consider the system of our climate, of our atmosphere. We need to consider our profound impact as humans with the man-made chemicals and combinations of chemicals that we are releasing
Especially the CO2.
into the soil, into the
CO2.
water, into the air. We're not just talking about what's happening to our climate. We're talking about what's happening to the soil and to all our water systems.
Air.
Yes.
Soil, water, and air
and
is our life. It's our life.
But it's not.
It's nature's way of keeping us alive. And if we poison that and we kill ourselves and the other species.
And there's a great deal of satisfaction in opening your thinking process to considering the larger systems around us and trying to understand them. It can bring a huge amount of excitement because curiosity and understanding things and asking questions about how things work around us, how nature has evolved, are amazing things to consider. And by considering them and realizing the profound effect that how they formed us as a species, and then trying to understand how we're distorting this and our need to pull back from this kind of distortion that we're creating. These are hopeful things. These are real hopeful things if people are thinking. And as I said, it won't cost you.
Well, I want to give you an example.
And that's where
I want to give you an example, which is
where you're not controlled
so
if you don't want to be.
what happened is we bought some sod the other day, and the guy brings over the sod. And on top of the sod, there's 2 bags of
2 50-pound bags of fertilizer. And I read the constitution of it, and it's nitrogen and phosphorus. That's what it is. It's huge amounts of. And now what do we do with these bags?
Now what am I going to do with them? Well, he said, sprinkle it on the side, and it's really going to help the lawn. Well, the question is, Susan read it and said, why do we want to put this on the land? It's going to just leach down into the water and go right down the St. Lucie.
So this is a decision-making point.
So,
And Jeff is saying, well,
what are we going to do with this stuff?
Now what
Because
do we
I got
do?
I got 100 pounds of fertilizer. What are we going to do with this stuff? Dennis, what would you do if I gave you 100 pounds of fertilizer that was worth probably $20, and I say, this is going to help your lawn? What would you do with it?
But it's going to destroy the water under the lawn.
What would you do with it, Dennis?
Well, Dennis would want to use the fertilizer.
Now, but understanding that it's going to leach into your groundwater and destroy the life in a nearby river. What river are you nearest to?
Mohawk.
Probably the Mohawk. it's going to leach into the Mohawk and river and contribute to the destruction
What would you do with it then?
biodiversity in that river.
I would pass it on to somebody who could use it and not have any bad effect.
But
But
everybody
that's
has
impossible.
impossible.
It has a bad effect. We
Now,
know
if I
scientifically
If I don't
that
use
we're
it,
overloading our planet with nitrogen and phosphorus
And if I-
at this
and if
point.
I don't use it and then I throw it away, it's going to wind up in a dump site somewhere and do the same damn thing.
Only if the bags open up.
Right, but you still got to have to use. It's
But
there.
they're there. So where do we begin this process of not having so many of these bags of phosphorus and nitrogen
Oh, poison.
that is overloading the planet at
That's-
this time
That's going to be for your.
and
That's
destroying
going to be.
waterways?
That's going to be your homework. What do we do with it? My suggestion is, this is my own stupid suggestion, is we shouldn't be drawing out of the planet anyway and find a better way to do the job to get the grass to grow.
Well, the reason they pump it with these kind of things is because it does have
It's
the
left
effect.
over, and it's
It
made
does have
money.
the effect of increasing and the growth and of whatever you're putting it on, because plants, they love, but we've done it too much, and the runoff is extraordinary now, and destroying the life in the waterways, in the ocean. So
See, that's the dilemma. But
these
then
are the things that depress
the dilemma is you've got the physical stuff here. It's given to you, even though you didn't want it. You didn't even think you needed it. And then the guy drops it off to you, which is very nice of the person because he thinks he's doing you a favor because he wants your grass to be
well,
green.
that's the party line as far as what should be done.
And but the thing is,
But that's not the
but
science.
that's not the science. The science is hurting our food and water and air supply. And the reason why they've got this is because phosphate is a byproduct, physical byproduct. They can make money with it from ammunition.
Making
Making ammunition.
weapons.
So you got phosphate mines where they make ammunition. So they got all this phosphate they put into
That's
fertilizer.
interesting that they, you don't even want to bring this up, but people make bombs out of
And they
this
make
stuff.
bombs out of this crap. So this is what I mean. So the whole thing is the economic system. Back to the economics again. Does that make sense to you guys or what? Anyway, but here's what you could do to stop this from happening. You don't have to buy anything from us. We don't want your website. We don't want your firstborn. Just understand what you could do. Your job is to get the message out about the human renewable energy measure. This is also sponsored by Renew the Earth and also Bridges Programming.
If we do not
We need,
value humans and each other, we're never going to.
your job to help this happen is use your mind to promote a concept of human renewable energy measurement, so all humanity around the world have their basic needs met.
It's a concept of universal human value, which is embodied in our economic system and represented by energy units that would be much more difficult for manipulation and so than what we have now, which is subjective fiat currency, representing things of what we think are valuable and representing people too. You know how that is. Your employer decides how valuable you are and what your salary is to be.
And suddenly the price
I want to thank you all for listening. This has been Jeff
neighbors
Nelson.
out of work because they closed the factory. Try to stretch your paycheck, but never quite enough. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.
Get that message
Fossil
out.
fuel
That's
affects our lives like ripples on a lake. Cars and farms and factories and
just get.
Supplies go down, prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back, and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone? Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees. Even trash converts to biofuels. Break loose from the stranglehold of oil companies.
Thanks again for
Renewables
listening.
can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone? Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.